But the Administrative Procedures Act then was voted on by all the different states, and in 1973, all of your courts and everything else went under the Administrative Procedures Act, and this is where they operate. The Administrative Procedures Act went into the court on one side, what you call admiralty, which admiralty just means it's like somebody that has a stick that hits you on the head and makes you do what they want you to. And so in all of this, the administrative procedure went into effect, gave the judge the right to rule in whatever way he wanted to. They changed the intent and put it with a charge, took the innocent plea away, and the reason they had to do all of that is if you win a case, you can sue the prosecuting attorney because he brought you into court. That's why they had to do it. They have to make it where, and most people don't know that they can sue the prosecuting attorney when they win a case if they're the defendant. You sue him because he's the one who has violated your rights. And so they had to close everything down. Well, at that point, all you have now is an administrative procedure. You're having an administrative hearing, and I defy any of you, take any of those documents you get out of the court and read them. And all it will talk about is a hearing. That's all it talks about. On this date, it says, greetings, you've been sued. On so-and-so date, you're hereby invited to a hearing on the above matter. It doesn't say you're invited to a hearing in this court. It says you're invited to a hearing in this matter, case number so-and-so. And it goes on to tell you all that. And every time when they write something out of the court, it will be about a hearing. You're simply getting, at that point, an administrative hearing. Out of the judge's chambers, the administrative hearing, he can make up any rules he wants to for that court. That's why you cannot use any law. Why in the world do you think you go in there and you put this motion into the court and they say denied? Why do you think they do that? You're trying to bring a third party in there. You can't do it either. And we don't make the third parties get out of it. As soon as the prosecutor starts talking, the thing you need to do is stand up and say, Judge, hold on a minute. That guy over there, I don't know it. I've met him before in my life. He is a third party to this. He don't have first-hand knowledge. So I don't want him in here talking against me. He's representing me, and I'm a firing. You realize in 1980, it's in the criminal code, they put into the law books that the attorneys represent both sides of the court. Now you know why you go in there and you think you're Perry Mason, and you go into that court and they clobber you just like if you weren't Perry Mason, if you were or weren't or whatever. Why? Because the prosecuting attorney is representing you. If you'll read their documents, you'll see they're representing you. Had one that came to us so clear the other day. They wrote back to this man. They said, Dear Mr. So-and-so, you know, we have been hired to represent this company. And you're not to send any more of your papers to that company. You see what I'm talking about? They're telling you what to do. They're representing you. And so you will do this, and this. And what did the man do? He wrote across it, he said, accepted and returned to you for closure in this case. If you think you're representing me, you're fired. Never has heard from that law firm since. It cost them about $25,000 to hire that character. He got one letter. Now the company is bare again. What are they going to do with it? You see, you have to understand what they're doing, and they're simply taking you to the cleaners by what you say. Everything we say can and will be held against us. Now, there's another side to that declaring and saying. Anything you say, you never back down from it. You never tell them. Do they ever tell you that they're wrong? How many times have you seen some poor old boy get up there and he's been in prison for 16 years and they've had for 10 years, they've had all kinds of evidence showing that he never should have been in that courtroom to begin with? How many times have you seen that? Have any of these district attorneys ever admitted we were wrong in doing that? No. They say, oh no, we know he was guilty. We tried him and the jury found him that way, and they'll stick with that story. Why would you back down on something that you state, something that you say, something that you write? Do you know that when you do, you've admitted you've written a false document? I've seen this over the years, and it's so funny. Guys will put a lien against a judge or file charges on him or do something. Boy, and the first thing you know, they get these threatening things. They get called into this other judge's office. If you don't take those things away from him, if you don't release those liens you've got on him, we're going to file charges on you and we're going to give you this much time in jail. And the guys go out and take them off, and the charge against them is filing a false document against somebody. Why? The instant you come back and say, you see, in this world, in common law, your word is your bond. Whatever you speak, it must be true, or it is a lie. It cannot be both. And so what happens is, once you write something and you speak it, and you write these bonds, don't you ever let anyone tell you that the bonds are no good. Who can tell you that? Well, I've got a book over here. It says right here that bonds have to be written this way. And if you believe that, you'll say, oh, I guess I made a mistake. I want to take that bond back. Now you've written a false document, you see. Because what is this book over here? Third party. Did anybody live 6,000 years ago? Was you there when Adam and Eve was in the garden? Nobody really knows what happens except what was written in the book. And what was written about history by other people. And history is always written usually from the eyes of the victor. And so they write it one way, and it may be exact opposite of the way it happened. So getting something out of a book is not law. Do you understand that the Black's Law thing that's been going all these years, everybody always quoted it? And they came out the other day and admitted it's all a hoax?
That's Black's Law Dictionary.
Yeah, Black's Law Dictionary. They said it's all a hoax, and everybody goes around, and for years it's been quoting what? Black's Law, and what was it all these years? A hoax. Books don't mean anything. It only means something to you when you write it or read it, and you can read it and you say, hey, this means this to me. Why don't everybody believe the Bible? Because they read it and they say, it ain't for me. Another guy reads it and he says, hey, I like this. You see, it's what you put your faith in, and that's what you build, what you speak on. So if you're going to get into something with somebody, then speak what's in here. Don't bring in a book. Don't start quoting to me out of the Bible. It better be inside of you. Don't quote to me, the Bible says this. Because that's the interpretation of your interpretation of what you think of that. It may be true, it may not be true. But that's how people have been foxed all these years. Now over 900 different churches. Which one's right? I don't know. I know what I believe, and I know my faith, and that's what I go on. But as to what's in a book does not establish. And so what is in you is what establishes who you are. And you have to understand that, because nobody can make you say otherwise. As I told you, I'd been talking about this legal determination for 2 or 3 years. And all of a sudden, this lady I was helping do some things on a tax thing. She went in, she was trying to find a document. So she went in this law office, wandered in off the street. So the attorney heard her in there, and he came out there, and he said, why are you looking for that? And she told him, he said, you know, I think that, and by what she is asking for, he had a clue that she was not of the regular ilk, you know. And so she said, he said that might work. I never thought of that. And for no reason whatsoever, he just said, if people in this country ever understand that everything is by legal determination, they'll turn the country right side up. And he turned around and walked off. He knew she was from this ilk. And so that's the reason he told her that. Nobody can make you make a legal determination. No one can make it for you. I've written hundreds of letters to district attorneys, and everybody knows how bad they are. Criminal district attorneys, they call themselves. They may be. I don't. I'm just telling you what they call themselves. They call it, and it's right over their letter. Criminal district attorney. And that's the way it says. Now, when they write to you, everybody knows, don't you have to do what the district attorney says? I mean, isn't that? No. Always we write back to them and say, hey, I don't know who you are. I don't know where you came from. You've got to be from a foreign venue and jurisdiction somewhere. You've got to be a third-party debt collector. I'm not going to give you permission to make a legal determination for me. In fact, if you think you're representing me, you're fired. And I have done many, 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 many of them. And not one of them to this day has ever written back. Not one of them. And that was verified by an attorney who was at a family reunion. And so one of the guys was talking about, this attorney keeps calling me every day, boy, and he just does this, and this. And this attorney walked by, and without hardly missing a beat, he says, next time he calls, just tell him he's fired. And it struck me, and that's what it was all about. And so, sure enough, we started firing them. And sure enough, they stayed fired. You see, they can't make a legal determination because it is a commercial crime for them to try to practice law if you haven't given permission. You have to give them permission to practice law. They cannot practice law without your permission concerning you. So if they're representing you, then they can practice law. If you signed on with them and say, I want them to represent me, then you can sign and they can practice law. All crimes are commercial crimes. It says so in CFR 2711 if you want to believe that. All crimes are commercial, and it goes on to list them. And it tells, and it starts out prostitution, murder, stealing, drugs. It lists all those things. Why are they all? And it started dawning on me. I kept reading that thing, and I said, why are these commercial crimes? And then it dawned on me, in commerce, you have to have a license to do something. You have to have a license to do anything. So in order to practice prostitution, you have to have a license. In order to kill somebody, you have to have a license. And no one has a license to do that, except the government. But anyway, you have to have a license. So the attorney must have a license to practice law. He does not graduate with a license to practice law. He graduates with a bar card and a certificate. And the Supreme Court says he can go out and practice law. Where'd the Supreme Court ever get into legislation? Where'd they become the legislature? I thought they were created by the legislature. And yet here they are telling these attorneys that they're licensed to practice law. What that means is that they cannot represent you without your permission. So what I'm trying to explain to you about all this is you got to understand that you're more powerful. If you've seen the movie, The Matrix, you understand what that guy found out at the end of the movie. That he was more powerful than 10,000 agents. He was more powerful than anyone because he had finally figured out who he was. And he figured out that what he said was what went, not what they said. And so he quit believing what they said. You see, the more you believe what somebody else says, the weaker you become. And the more you believe yourself, the stronger you become and the weaker they get. And this is what you have to come to. You are the one who speaks. Why do you think the Creator said you have the right to get up and declare it? But whatever you say will remain for eternity. And it's true. Do you know that when we leave here tonight, that they've got machines that they can come in this room 2 days later and record everything that was said in here tonight? Yeah, they do. And so don't ever think you can have a secret meeting somewhere if they can't come in and find out what you said. But this is how strong of what I'm telling you is, of your declaration of what you want. You see, as long as you speak the truth, it stands forever. It's when you get into taking a third party in, a third party is a liar. Always a liar. And the third party comes into your conversation, what happens to your truthful conversation? It becomes a lie. Because you can't mix a lie with the truth and get truth. You can't do it. Truth will overcome a lie, but it will not mix with it. And so what I'm telling you is who you are. Each one of you in here. If everybody in here understood all of this and practiced it every day, I guarantee you'd turn Dallas, you'd turn the whole state of Texas upside down. Because this is where it is. It's within each one of us. And I'm not telling you I'm not, trying to be a coach and rah you into anything. Your life is never going to be satisfied until you understand this. Till you come to understand your freedom. That everybody is free.